Title: At the corporate party, my cheating wife's lover became the key to her undoing. The annual gala at Pfizer and Company was nothing short of dazzling. Every detail, from the crystal chandeliers to the live string quartet, radiated sophistication. It was an evening meant to celebrate success, something I had spent over 2 decades building. But instead of pride, I felt a gnawing emptiness as I nursed a glass of whiskey by the bar. Across the room, my wife Clara was the epitome of charm. Her crimson gown clung perfectly to her figure, and her laughter, light and melodic, mingled effortlessly with the hum of conversation. Everyone adored her. Clara had a gift for making people feel valued, seen. It was a quality I once admired in her, until I began to question its authenticity. My eyes never left her as she chatted with Victor Lawrence, one of the firm's ambitious new hires. His hand grazed her arm, lingering just long enough to stoke a familiar pang in my chest, the same ache I had been suppressing for months. "Adrian, you're missing the fun," Peter, my colleague, said, clapping me on the back. "In a minute," I replied with a forced smile, my gaze still locked on Clara. She threw her head back, laughing at something Victor said. Moments later, she leaned in close, whispering something into his ear. At 9 o'clock sharp, she rose abruptly, murmuring to Victor before they slipped through the grand ballroom doors together. My grip tightened around my glass. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. My attention shifted to the small silver box I had placed on our table earlier that evening. It wasn't a romantic gesture or an anniversary gift. No, that box was something far more sinister. The first move in a carefully calculated plan to shatter Clara's carefully curated facade. When she returned 20 minutes later, her cheeks were flushed, her lipstick slightly smudged. Victor reappeared shortly after, looking composed, though a sheen of sweat glistened on his brow. Clara's eyes lit up the moment she spotted the silver box on the table. "For me?" she asked, her voice dripping with sweetness. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "A little surprise." She turned to Victor, whispering softly, "My husband's such a naive fool, but I do love his gifts." Victor chuckled, his arrogance unmistakable. "Open it," I said evenly, my voice betraying none of the storm brewing inside. With delicate precision, Clara untied the ribbon and unwrapped the box. Inside, nestled on a velvet cushion, was a single key. Her brows knit together in confusion. "A key? To something special," I replied, raising my glass. "You'll find out soon enough." Her laughter was nervous, her unease fleeting but unmistakable. She tucked the key into her clutch, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. The seed of doubt had been planted. The ride home was steeped in silence, broken only by the low hum of the engine. Clara was glued to her phone, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen. "Who are you texting?" I asked casually, my eyes fixed on the road. "Emily," she replied, not bothering to look up. Emily, her best friend and most reliable alibi. I nodded, feigning belief, though I knew better. I had known about Clara's affair for weeks. It began with subtle signs: late nights at yoga, unexplained charges on the credit card, and the way she clung to her phone like it held her deepest secrets. But tonight, I wasn't just the fool in her narrative. I was the architect of her reckoning. That key wasn't just a gift. It was an invitation to a carefully laid trap that would dismantle the life she thought she had so cleverly constructed. The phone felt like an extension of her hand. At first, I brushed it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. But the evidence kept stacking up. 2 weeks ago, I stumbled upon the smoking gun. While searching for my passport in Clara's gym bag, I found a second phone. Unlocking it revealed a trove of messages between her and Victor. Explicit, shameless, and damning. My stomach churned as I read their plans to siphon money from our accounts and start a new life together. That night, I made a decision. If Clara wanted to play games, I'd show her I was the master. Every detail had to be perfect. Clara was cunning, and Victor was arrogant, but not entirely foolish. To ensure my plan succeeded, I needed precision. This wasn't just about exposing them. It was about dismantling the foundation of their deceit. First, I targeted our finances. Clara had been quietly draining money from our joint account, but she underestimated how closely I monitored my investments. I didn't freeze the accounts outright. Instead, I funneled most of the funds into accounts she couldn't access, leaving just enough for her to think her charade was working. Next, I hired a private investigator named Eric, an ex-detective with a gruff demeanor and a knack for discretion. When I handed him Clara's second phone and explained the situation, he nodded knowingly. People like this always get too comfortable, he said. Leave it to me. Over the next 2 weeks, Eric provided a steady stream of evidence. Photos of Clara and Victor at secluded cafes, time-stamped messages of their secret meetings, and footage of them entering a luxury boutique, where they charged items to our joint credit card. The piece de resistance was the apartment. Through Clara's financial trail, I discovered she and Victor had purchased a small but expensive flat on the outskirts of the city, paid for with my hard-earned money. Their audacity was breathtaking. I visited the apartment under the guise of a prospective buyer, and when the realtor handed me the keys for a private viewing, I installed hidden cameras in every room. The footage streamed directly to my phone, giving me a front-row seat to their betrayal. Finally, I prepared the silver box, knowing Clara wouldn't resist a mystery. Inside was a key, a trap that would lead her to the place where her lies would unravel. By the time everything was ready, a strange calm settled over me. The anger and hurt that had consumed me were replaced with focus. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. The reckoning. Friday arrived with a chill in the air. I told Clara I had a late client meeting and kissed her on the cheek. I'll probably just have a quiet night at home, she said. I smiled, pretending to believe her. Don't wait up, I replied, slipping into my car. Instead of heading to the office, I parked a block away from the apartment and waited. At precisely 8:14 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up. Clara stepped out, her crimson coat billowing in the wind. Victor followed, carrying a bottle of wine. They laughed as they entered, oblivious to the cameras documenting their every move. I waited until 10 p.m. before making my move. The walk to the apartment felt endless, each step heavy with anticipation. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the thrill of what was about to unfold. When I knocked, the sound echoed through the quiet hallway. Inside, I heard shuffling footsteps and hushed voices. Clara opened the door, her face going pale. Adrian, she whispered. Behind her, Victor appeared, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. He gripped the wine glass like a shield. Good evening, I said calmly, stepping inside. Clara tried to speak, but I silenced her with a raised hand. Pulling out my phone, I played the live feed from the apartment, every kiss, touch, and whispered word they thought was private. I hope the wine's good, I said coldly. It's the last drink you'll have here. The fallout. On Monday, I dismantled Victor's life. In the boardroom, I announced his termination for unethical practices, sliding a folder of evidence across the table. Security escorted him out within minutes. For Clara, the fallout was personal. I filed for divorce, presenting financial audits and video evidence to the court. The ruling was swift. Clara was left with nothing. Our social circle shunned her, and even her closest friends distanced themselves. Clara begged for forgiveness, showing up at my office in tears. Adrian, I made a mistake. Please, we can fix this. Her words felt hollow. The only mistake, I replied coldly, was thinking I'd let you get away with it. Freedom. Months passed, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. One evening, I returned to the riverbank near the apartment, holding the key from the silver box. Turning it over in my hand, I reflected on what it symbolized: betrayal, truth, and freedom. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed it into the river, watching it disappear beneath the surface. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your power. And in reclaiming mine, I found something far more valuable: myself.